had during a rally outside the Egyptian and Turkish embassies in London, and they called for Muslim armies to attack Israel. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the NHS Jihad demo leader have his doctor's licence revoked? Should the NHS Jihad demo leader have his doctor's licence revoked? Now, it's been revealed that Abdul Wahid, the leader of an extremist Islamic group, works as an NHS GP under a different name. Now, the patients of Dr. Wahid Asif Shaider in Harrow have expressed shock at their GP's supposed double life. The group he leads sparked outrage last weekend when members chanted jihad during a rally outside the Egyptian and Turkish embassies in London, and they called for Muslim armies to attack Israel. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the NHS Jihad demo leader have his doctor's licence revoked? What debate to discuss this? I'm joined by political commentator Peter.
I mean, can you imagine an IRA member being a GP back when it was the IRA was at its height in Kilburn? You know, can you imagine that? And the government says nothing. National Health Service says nothing. He's just allowed to be a GP. It wouldn't have happened. So why is this being allowed to happen? We have to ask ourselves.
Spence and cultural historian of the University of Leeds, Dr. Philip Kisley, and former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Dr. Philip. What do you think about that? What's your view on this one?
Well, bearing in mind what's just happened over the last 3 weeks since the pogrom on the 7th of October, it's absolutely outrageous that a jihadi GP should be allowed to work in the NHS. I mean, if you just think about it, you know, he's calling for blood at weekends, and then Monday through Friday, he's expected to care for Jewish patients, but not only Jewish patients, women and gay patients as well. For me, it has a greater resonance because I'm not only thinking about the very clear and present danger he represents to patients, and particular patients at that. I'm also thinking about really the infiltration of a kind of hardline, authoritarian, anti-British kind of view of the world that has taken hold in the institutions, particularly the universities, but also the media as well, over the last 10 years or so. So for me, he's representative, just to finish the point, he's representative of all of those things, and he's a very, very worrying figure. I mean, he's using a false name, and he's calling for the death of Jews.
So he's a man that's took the Hippocratic Oath at some point, never to harm, never to do no harm, you know, and here he is using a false name. So during the week, he's a doctor. At weekends, he's head of this Islamic group. Unbelievable. I can't say how worried I'm becoming about this country of ours. It's quite unbelievable this is allowed to happen. I hope the said GP loses his job. I hope that the GMC, General Medical Council, kick him out. But, you know, 20 years ago, if I'd been talking about an IRA member, it would have happened. Today, I can't say 100% that this guy will anything. You know, he won't lose his job. I can't say 100% that this man will lose his job, will be kicked out of the NHS. No, I can't say it because we just don't know anymore. We have allowed the country to get in this state. And it's time now for Britain to wake up and just look around our country and see what's happened to it. Understand what is happening as you're eating your porridge or having your dinner or eating your lunch. Just see what's happening for a change, instead of just thinking of oneself and think about the country you're living in. I mean, this is an absolute disgrace. I literally can't believe what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, well, although some people interpret jihad as something else, I mean, it doesn't necessarily interpret it as that. Let's go to Peter Spence, a political commentator. Peter.
Yes, indeed. It's a very valid point you make, Nana, that indeed jihad does actually mean two things. It means go to war, it means cleanse your soul. And I mean, it is.
We have only known jihad to mean one thing, and it wasn't the latter, was it? And why is a GP out on the streets of London anyway, demanding the death of Jews? What's that about? When was it okay for a GP to demand the death of anyone? I want to know. Yeah, I really like to know when it became okay for a GP to demand the death of a human being. I don't believe it is okay. And no amount of trying to pretty it all up or anything else is going to change my mind on that.
Is perfectly within the bounds of possibility. It seems to me that the General Medical Council will have this story drawn to their attention, and it's perfectly possible they will act in whatever way they think fit. I'm sure they would. At the same time, I think it's also quite likely on the back of this story that the practice where this particular doctor works and has worked for many years will feel the need to contact their patients, probably by email, I'd guess, and explain the situation and maybe give.
So can you imagine you sat at home, and you minding your own business, and you get an email from your local surgery. Yes, hello, Mrs. Wilson. Just to inform you that the doctor you've been seeing for 15 years, I don't know, we'll call him Dr. Smith, right? Dr. Smith is actually the leader of a pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas group, and he's wishing for the death of Jews on a weekend. Are you okay about this? Would this worry you if you went to see your GP, Dr. Smith? Would you be upset? Would you feel that you are, in harm and in harm's way? Would you? If you would, can you please let us know by answering this email? But don't expect an answer back, because we'll just ignore your answer. But protocol, dictates that we have to send these emails out informing you of the GP's pastimes. Therefore, a protocol, we've done what we said, and your reply will be ignored. So not to worry, eh?
His side of the argument, but the Daily Mail has used also loaded language about what is an incredibly complex and layered set of pain that's engulfed so much of the Middle East, notably the Israelis and indeed the Palestinians. And they have painted, to my eye, a crudely and gratuitously oversimplistic picture of.
What's that got to do with anything? He's a GP. He's a general practitioner. What is this idiot waffling on about? Unbelievable. So he's having a go at the Daily Mail, because the Daily Mail have obviously wrote something about this GP. So, they gratuitous language. I wonder what kind of language this GP was using on the streets of London at the weekend.
what is actually going on, for which reason I would argue they've done a hatchet job on this guy, and I don't buy it.
No.
Well, no, the Daily Mail are not here to defend themselves, and I don't think that's fair comment, is it? Because let's bear in mind,
Well,
they are
no,
no, but that's not fair comment. First of all, they're not here to defend themselves. That's the first thing. But secondly, if he is a doctor and he is calling for jihad, which has a double meaning, but he's also changed his name. Let's not forget. That's the essence of this conversation here. And even when you tell that story, that doesn't sound good. So I don't think that's the Daily Mail doing a hatchet job. I think this is somebody who's moonlighting in a very unsavoury manner. Stephen Pound.
I wouldn't want him anywhere near me with a hypodermic needle. I can tell you that for a kick-off. Look, the reality is he's a wrong 'un. He's actually using a false name. Therefore, as a self-employed person, because don't forget, GPs don't work for the NHS. GPs work for themselves. You know, that right back to 1948, they were completely separate. So, you know, the NHS can't boot him out, much as I think, you know, we should. However, the General Medical Council can look at his license to practice. And I think the fact that he's been using a false name, that actually flags up a real problem anyway. But what I'd like to give this so-and-so a taste of his own medicine. Let's pile on down to his surgery, stand outside and start shouting for, you know, something completely opposite to what he's shouting for. And just actually say, look, up with this we will not put. I'm sorry. It's not right. You're supposed to be a doctor. You're supposed to be healing people. You're supposed to be a figure of some significance and importance and respectability within the community, not some tub-thumping jihadi loon strutting the streets of London calling for people to be slaughtered and murdered. No, he's a wrong 'un. Let's get him out.
Yeah. And do you think, because, look, you can't be, you know, learning the Hippocratic Oath where you're not going to harm anybody and then talking about jihad, even though it has a double meaning, when you've also changed your name. I mean, I'm going to come back to Peter on that one, because, you know, you're trying to say the Daily Mail's doing a hatchet job. I know, I've written for the Daily Mail and I write for them now, and I know.
Me too.
But I know full well that there's a huge process to make sure that you're not making things up. They can't just say anything. So they are simply reporting this situation. And remember the work they did with the immigration situation as well. That was fantastic work. That was no hatchet job. It was fantastic work. So on this, they've exposed somebody who would have carried on practicing had it not been potentially for them exposing it. I mean, what do you say to that, Peter?
Well, I mean, I too worked for the Daily Mail. I cut my teeth there in Fleet Street, when it actually was Fleet Street, believe it or not. So I'm very conversant with the techniques of journalism, which is, it's not that you make things up, but you make choices about which bits you put in and which bits you leave out.
Yeah, but this, no, but let's stay with
the nuance of words.
No.
So, okay, so you're a journalist, you sat at your desk. So do you put in that this guy is a GP? Yes. Do you put in that this guy has changed his name? Yes. Do you put in that he is the leader of a jihadi demo group? Yes. Do you put in the area where he's a GP? Yes. Do you put in his full name, his full legal name? Yes. Do you put in the fact that he's changed his name? Yes. So what is this guy on about again? You know, he said there's things you put in and there's things you leave out. Well, everything I just mentioned has to be put in. So what is he talking about? See, it's people like this guy. These are the people that need to be shouted down. They need to be shouted down. They need to realize the reality of what is going on. I mean, I still can't believe that a GP in this country is roaming the streets of London at the weekend, screaming for the death of Jews. I never ever thought this would be allowed to happen. Remember the old saying, never again, not in our lifetime, never again, never again. Well, you know, I'm sure Hitler had a few problems, teething problems, and none of them were made to leave, were they? So I'm beginning to wonder, I mean, the actual question itself, should the NHS jihadi demo leader have his doctor's license revoked? I think that is an easy yes. I mean, you could change that to, should the NHS IRA leader, demo leader, have his doctor's license revoked? Yes. You know, anyone that's got anything to do with terrorists demanding the death of people, any human being, should not be a GP. It goes against everything a GP is meant to believe in. I can't believe, I keep saying it because I can't believe it. I literally can't.
Stay with the point here. You can't blame them. They are not culpable for this. This is somebody who has changed their name and using a different name whilst they practice as a doctor and have been found to be on a pro-Palestine march calling for jihad. That's what they've exposed. I'm glad they've done that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, like I say, I think it's very likely this matter will come to the attention of the General Medical Council, and they might take whatever they regard to be I'm sure they will take whatever they regard to be the appropriate sanctions. I just say again, and with some
appropriate sanctions, i.e., probably be spirited off to some other part of the country and become part of a GP practice there. This is what will happen. It's time we woke up to what's going on in this country. It's time we woke up to our government. Our government is blindly sitting by. I mean, just letting all these things go on and doing nothing. You know, they'd rather talk about Keir Starmer becoming his wonderful dream of becoming Prime Minister of this country, which is not going to happen. I'm afraid I'm going to take the affirmation that it is not going to happen. Keir Starmer will never be Prime Minister of this country because we cannot have a Labour Party in power. This cannot be allowed to happen. If we have a Labour Party in power, we know the outcome. I don't know. It's like we're sitting on a knife's edge and we're just waiting for that final push over the cliff, like the lemmings we have become.
Emphasis, do not rush to judgment.
Don't rush to judgment. I don't think there's much to judge. Dr. Philip Kisley, what do you think?
It's remarkable, isn't it, how context is brought into play sometimes and not in other times. I mean, we're thinking about the word jihad here, and this is at an anti-Israel demo, hundreds of thousands of people chanting for Jewish blood. I think we know what jihad means in that context. There is no grey area. But when it comes to, I'm really interested to know what people thought about the actual pogrom on the 7th, when young children were raped and murdered, when old people were exactly the same raped and murdered, where bodies were desecrated and spat on. We didn't get a whole load of complexity and nuance and thought then. What we got actually was total silence from the institutions and from people who would actually defend this character. He is a wrong one. He's certainly a wrong one. Actually defend this character. People just wait until all of that slightly goes away, and then they start defending the indefensible. And really, it's unbelievable to listen to, that you would actually think that, we need to stop and think here before someone who's using a false name is calling for jihad on the streets of London. We need to stop and think before he should stop practicing. That's absolute nonsense. Of course we don't. We don't need to stop and think. We stop him practicing and we think about deporting him.
Well, yeah, if he can be deported, but also, I mean, there was anti-Semitic. I think there was anti-Semitic stuff on social media as well. So I think that there's more complexity to the story. So it's not as it's not as cut dry as it sounds. Well, there's a lot more going on with that doctor as well. So let me come to you each then. So Stephen Pound, what do you think? Should he have his license?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to email in to say I love you, but I do respect you, and I think you're absolutely right to pick up on the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath, which every single doctor, doesn't matter whether they're GP or consultant or surgeon or whatever level, starts off by saying, first do no harm.
Yeah.
This man has done harm.
So
Let's
what do
get
you
shot
think?
of him.
Yeah, get shot of him.
He should not be practicing as a GP, practicing
Spencer.
on the public with public money.
Peter Spencer, should he stay as
The
a doctor?
organization that he heads purports to be non-violent. Therefore, it is oversimplistic to call them. I didn't say it purports to be. I didn't say it is, but that's what it claims to be. And that's the problem
you'd
here.
let him carry on practicing? Yes or no? Because I've got to move on. You'd let him carry on practicing? Yes or no?
Until the GMC chucked him out.
Yeah, until they chuck him out. So I wouldn't go and see him. Dr. Philip, yes or no?
He's a clear and present danger. He's got to be taken away from practice absolutely right now. And bearing in mind, just very quickly, bearing in mind that the organisation he fronts is illegal in Germany. It's a terrorist organisation.
There is that as well. Let's not forget that.
So the organisation, in case you missed it, this doctor, this GP fronts, is actually illegal in Germany. Okay, it's seen as a terrorist group. So what do we now choose the terrorists? Do we now decide, oh right, so it's illegal in Germany and he wouldn't be able to be a GP in Germany, but he can be a GP here. Oh, what a shock. So the organization this man fronts is the leader of, is illegal in Germany because it's seen as a terrorist group. And we got this guy in the middle who doesn't seem to find anything wrong with this GP's actions at all and likes to ramble on about nuance. Okay, we know that's a like lefty way of thinking, but he's got a right to his view, I guess. But is he right? No, it's not right. Because as I said, if we had a GP who belonged to the IRA, they'd be booted out straight away. If we had a GP that belonged to the PLO, he'd be booted out straight away. But in this modern day, creepy, horrible, disgusting world we're now living in, it's not so clear that he will be kicked out, is it, anymore? It's not so obvious that he's going to be kicked out. He could very well find himself, like, as I said, spirited away to some other part of the country and set up practice there. I love this this journalist. She's about one of the best journalists that GB News has. Very straight to the point. Very conscious of what she's saying, and I do like her. She's one of the best ones I've come across in years. But the question itself, remember, would you want to go and see a GP that you knew spent his time, any free time, screaming and shouting for the death of Jewish people? I mean, have people forgotten the never again saying? Because I think our government has. It looks like the Russian government has, with what happened with that airplane the other day, yesterday. A lot of people are saying, well, it's not happening here, it's happening in Israel and Gaza. Well, excuse me, there's enough happening in this country for us to become very, very concerned, more than concerned, about some of the people that are actually living in this country and what they're up to. I mean, let's remember the Scottish, I do believe it was in Scotland, and I think it was Glasgow Airport, when there was a terrorist attack And I do believe that those terrorists were surgeons. I'm sure I'm right. Those terrorists, I mean, you can Google it if you want to, but there was a terrorist attack up at Glasgow Airport, and the terrorists themselves, 3 of them were surgeons. And here we have, again, a GP that at weekends, you know, likes to scream and shout for the death of Jews. In Great Britain in 2023, oh dear, what is to be done about this mess? What? I know what. Our government needs to wake up, and our government needs to understand that people are now becoming extremely worried about the way the government is behaving. The government is doing nothing. Freedom to protest, is not what we've been seeing. What we've been seeing in many streets, not just the streets of London, the streets of Manchester, streets of Cardiff. What we've been seeing is not the right to protest. Okay, these people have took it upon themselves, because they've become far too comfortable in this country to scream for the death of Jewish people. Let's face it, that's what they're doing. And now, many people in Harlow are going to get an email, explaining the doctor's plight. And yes. So if you've got any questions, put it in your, put it in the chat. Any thoughts, put it in the chat. It's an open forum. I just wonder what's happening to this country. It needs to be put right, and we need to start making sure it's put right in a lawful way. Therefore, we have to lobby the government to start acting. The government is such a waste of time. The government of this country should hang its head in shame for what it's allowed over the last 3 weeks in this country.